In the blue corner, we have LinkedIn newsletters, and in the red corner, we have off-platform email newsletters. Question is, listeners, which will win the title for Best for B2B Businesses? G'day, listeners. It is Coach Michelle J. Raymond, and this week we're going to be talking about all things newsletters. And it's really top of mind for me because it's something that I kind of in the back of my mind know I should have always had one since I started my business. And guess what? It's coming up to nearly 5 years, and I have never got one started off LinkedIn. I have got one on LinkedIn, but it's taken me up until now to finally wrap my head around why I should be doing it, be in the right space for it, and actually get it done. That's right, listeners. It is now crossed off my to-do list. Thank you, Lil, for all of your help as always. And shout out to Louise Deed over in New Zealand. She was the one that actually got me to set it up. And not going to lie, there's a little bit of argy-bargy because the last thing that I ever want is to send out something to people that annoys them, that for some reason they're like, stop sending me, and hitting that unsubscribe, which is what I find myself doing more and more lately. And on the other hand, this is where I'm conflicted. One, I don't want to send out, stuff that people don't find valuable. On the other side, I don't want people to miss out on all of the cool stuff that I've got for them, all the tips and strategies that will help them grow their business. So let's have a look at this today. We're going to have a look at pros and cons between LinkedIn newsletters and also the newsletters off the platform. So before we do that, listeners, let's have a quick word from our sponsors, Metrical. Listeners, Metrical's 2025 social media study is here, and it is their most comprehensive report on social media trends. Get this, they analyze data from over 1 million accounts and over 21 million posts from 8 social networks to measure the evolution of all of these different platforms, help to forecast 2025 trends, and compare the results with the previous 2024 study. Now it's your turn. Download the full study for free, explore its pages, analyze the data, and find opportunities to grow your brand. Everything you need will be in the show notes. And as a bonus, don't forget, listeners, you can use the code Michelle30 to try any premium plan for 30 days. So make sure you go and check it out. Okay, listeners, let's dive straight into the pros and cons of LinkedIn newsletters. Here's why I love mine. Ever since I started my LinkedIn personal one, I've gathered 8,500 subscribers. And I love the fact that every time somebody reaches out to connect with me, they are automatically invited to become a subscriber to the newsletter. So LinkedIn is actively helping me to get more and more subscribers, which I love. It's on autopilot. It's not another job that I need to do. And so the more that I build my personal brand, the more people reach out and connect, the more newsletter subscribers that I get. So that's a huge tick for me. But possibly even bigger tick was just how easy it was to set up. So starting your newsletter on LinkedIn, I love that it's free. So that's always a big bonus. I love that it takes only a few minutes to actually set up, and you get some reasonable features in there. Like we can embed this podcast episode, YouTube videos that I make. We can have images. So they're quite rich formats. So it means that the newsletter is not really boring. We can make it come alive. So that's another reason that I love it. And the thing that LinkedIn does, like how cool is this? If you didn't know, the very first newsletter that goes out for you goes to every single one of your connections and followers. Now, that is a massive free kick. It is the only time, listeners, on LinkedIn that something like that happens. If you're doing a newsletter on your company page, and then it will go to all of your page followers. And that's a massive advantage. So I've discovered in working with my clients across the board that you can expect to get roughly 30% subscriber rate based out of your total number. So if you have 3,000 connections and followers, then you could expect to get around 1,000 newsletter subscribers, which I think is pretty cool. It's such a fast way to get started with your newsletter. I love the fact that these newsletters are indexed by Google. So not only can my newsletter get discovered on LinkedIn, I can piggyback off LinkedIn's credibility and basically have it show up when people are doing Google searches. And I've had people reach out and connect. It's often why you see people are engaging with your newsletter long after it's ever been published. And you think, wow, how did they stumble across that? So that's another cool thing that I like about it. So there's so many pros going on here. And I think, the main one is that I've already built my community on LinkedIn. I've built my credibility on LinkedIn. And so from this perspective, it's easy to just leverage that. Now, upside, downside, and everything, I love to give you both sides. What are the downsides of a LinkedIn newsletter? Probably the most obvious one is that I don't own the subscriber list. So I can't get in and download a list of emails. I'll never own that. I can go in and see who has. I can make sure that I'm connected to them. I can have conversations. There's lots of other cool things that I can do with this, but I can't use it off the platform. Now, if LinkedIn was to do something where they decided that they wanted to change the algorithm or pull the plug on newsletters altogether, then I'm going to be in a world of pain, right? Like no other words for it. I think I would rock in a corner and start crying. So please, LinkedIn, hear our prayers. Do not get rid of LinkedIn newsletters. Now, the good news is, listeners, I don't think they're going to do that. They're backing LinkedIn newsletters and have been very strong around those reasons of being, it's a great tool for thought leadership. So it can really help B2B buyers through that journey by sharing, extended thoughts beyond the short form that comes with posts. The other thing that it's not so great at is, I would say, analytics. I think when you can't access things like open rates or how far down they read, you really don't have a lot of tools to work out, did people like this? What's resonating? Are they just opening it and not going down and actually reading it? And that makes it tricky to ever improve. So yes, we can go by our number of impressions or the comments and things like that are happening. But for me, realistically, there's not a lot of really in-depth analytics that we can go into. The other thing is you don't have as many of the kind of cool smart features that you get for LinkedIn newsletters as what you would get for some of the other platforms that are more dedicated newsletter platforms. And so from that perspective, I can't tag where people come from. I can't tag them into specific channels so that I can really personalize my newsletters and target them more specifically in the future. So, there are some downsides. So upside, downsides, as I said, I was going to share, but ultimately for me, I found that the LinkedIn newsletter is something that is a cornerstone of what I do. I'm sending one on my personal page every single week. As soon as a new episode goes live of this podcast, there's a newsletter that accompanies that as well. So it's a really great way for me to cross promote things and leverage my LinkedIn community. So if LinkedIn newsletters are so good, why did I go and invest in setting up my own newsletter off LinkedIn? Okay, so let's talk about email newsletters that happen off LinkedIn. Now, I'm certainly no expert. I've just shared, I've only gotten started this week. So I'm going to share the link for my brand new off LinkedIn newsletter with you. It is b2bgrowthco.com/newsletter is where you'll find it. And I'm going to share the links into the show notes as well. And so here we are, listeners, brand new newsletter off LinkedIn. Why is it necessary? What are the pros? Well, ultimately, I'm going to own the list of people that subscribe up to that newsletter. So I'll have full control over that data. If social media platforms change their mind, it doesn't matter. I've still got access to all of these details. I can still stay in contact with my community, which I love. So it's really an insurance policy from that side of things. Now, as you're building up that list, there are a lot more smart features, a lot more targeting, a lot better analytics. When you think about it, really, obviously a platform that is specifically built around newsletters is going to have a lot more features than something where it's a bit of a nice to have over on LinkedIn. So from that perspective, there's so much upside. And especially, as I said, things like analytics where you get to see open rates, see what's resonating. I could see how very quickly and easily that you can start to build up a pretty cool subscriber base and give them a product that they actually find valuable. And that's the thing that I don't think LinkedIn can compete with at this point in time, is there's no way of really telling what's working or what's not. So that makes it a bit tricky from my perspective. Another upside for newsletters that are sent off LinkedIn, I think people treat them differently when they're signing up for something. And I think we either value them or we're ruthless and unsubscribe. So those people that find them valuable remain loyal, and they are going to have a higher chance of converting into new customers. And so that's something that I'm always looking for. How can we use our community to stay in touch, stay top of mind, not fight the algorithms over on LinkedIn land like it seems to be all the time? LinkedIn's getting more crowded. I'm competing for more attention. Maybe LinkedIn decides that it's the year of short form video, which is looking very much likely what they're pushing. So newsletters slide down a little bit in features, and maybe I have to look at where I'm spending my time. Now, from that perspective, there is lots of upside for these newsletters off LinkedIn. Absolutely. But here's the thing. How long will it take me to build my brand new newsletter off LinkedIn? So it's going to require me to be actively promoting all the time, talking about it, whether it's in this podcast, in my posts, in conversations, making sure that I've got some methods for drawing people into this new subscriber list. I think it's going to take years for me to get anywhere near the 8,500 subscribers that I've got on LinkedIn. And it's probably like building a podcast. When you first start out, you've got 0 listeners, and it takes time and it takes effort and it takes a lot of focus to actively try and promote the podcast. And I think it's the same with the newsletter if you want to grow those subscribers. Is it worth the effort? Absolutely. But will I always have the time and energy in my business to consistently do this? Time will tell. And obviously this is something that I'm adding into my workload, and I've got Lil helping me, but I want to make sure that we make the most of this now that it's all been set up. The other kind of con for me in my mind is that I often think, who needs another email in their life? Do people really want to subscribe to another newsletter? And I feel like when you're competing for attention in their inbox, and with all of the automatic filtering that goes on these days with emails and making sure that things get delivered, there's some of the question marks for me. And if you've got any thoughts on this, or this is your area of expertise, reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. What are your tips for getting around some of these issues that I've got going on in my mind, some of these thoughts? And these are genuinely the roadblocks that have been coming up for me over the last 5 years. But then the other side of me, and what Louise said to me was, Michelle, like, you never do anything that's not of value or in service of your audience. And if someone unsubscribes, it's not the end of the world. They just unsubscribed. It doesn't mean anything. So I've had to reframe how I see this and just know that I'm going to put my heart and soul into these things, just like I do with everything else, to make sure that you walk away with tips that you can action, strategies that will make a difference, and really stay on top of how you can use LinkedIn to grow your business. So we've got the pros and cons between LinkedIn newsletters, and we've got the pros and cons between email newsletters. But is there a third option that we need to be thinking about? I think if we were to review the pros and cons of each of these newsletter formats, we would find that things would come out reasonably even, and there would be people that would pick a side. But ultimately, I think they're both cool tools that we should be using. And I think the actual real winning solution here is a hybrid. It is a combination of using both. And for some of you might be thinking, oh my God, Michelle, I can't do even more. How am I going to ever have a LinkedIn newsletter, an email newsletter, and do all the other things that I've got to get done? And I hear you. I'm in exactly the same boat as you. But there's nowhere that says that you can't repurpose one way or the other. My friend Irit, she just got started. She's got a really amazing email newsletter that she puts a lot of effort into. I find it really valuable, and it's something that I'm subscribed to. And I always walk away going, I'm so glad that I read that. And I said to her, why don't you share that on LinkedIn as well? because there are people over there that would really love it. And maybe it's a different way of reaching audiences at different times. They may or may not see one or the other. And there's a concern that most people come with, but isn't it duplication? Will Google hate me because I've got lots of the same information? No, no, no. The world's not going to end if you repurpose your content. For me, my LinkedIn newsletters have previously also been turning into articles for my blog on my website. And now I'm going to be taking some of the information that's in my LinkedIn newsletter and putting that in my other one. Now, my email newsletter is not going to be exactly the same, and I'm still planning exactly what that might look like. But I want it to be short and sharp and have things that people can actually take away and go, yep, I can do that. It doesn't matter how busy I am. That is something I can take action on because I can see that's going to get me closer to my business goals. So I don't think that we have to choose a side. I think the option is, how can we leverage the best bits of both to get more growth for our business? And as marketers, if you are responsible for your email newsletter off the platform, you could easily promote your LinkedIn newsletter on that and vice versa, depending what your business goals are. So if you've got KPIs to grow your newsletter off LinkedIn, then why not use your LinkedIn community to get you there? I worked with one client. They have 150,000 paid subscribers. Overnight, we got about 25,000 subscribers for their LinkedIn newsletter, which was mind blowing. And fast forward a few months, it's pushing up to close to 50,000 subscribers. Now, that is not a number that anyone would sneeze at. That is a captive audience. We know that every time that newsletter goes out, LinkedIn's notifying all 50,000 of those subscribers. So you're not fighting the home feed algorithms. So for those of you who don't have a company page newsletter but are actively growing your company page, absolutely make sure that your newsletter is a part of this because it's such a great way to engage your community. So the question is, listeners, are you on the blue team for LinkedIn newsletters, or are you on the red team for email newsletters? Or is there a new team that we should be joining, which is the green team, which is all about the hybrid approach? And I think that's the one that resonates with me, taking the best of the tools that we have available to us, repurposing so we're not drowning in extra work. And for me, it's just another way that I can make sure that I'm staying top of mind with my community. I'm sharing information that will make a difference to them. And ultimately, so when they're ready to buy, who do they think of? B2B Growth Code, Michelle J. Raymond. And that is exactly how these things are designed to work. So as we wrap up today's episode, I have one other super cool announcement. For those of you who are listeners to the podcast in Denmark and around that area, I am coming back to speak at the Linked Summit in May. I cannot wait to come back. I would love to see you. It's just such a fabulous event. So if you haven't been before, there's a reason that I'm flying to the other side of the world again 6 weeks later after I get back from speaking at Uplift Live and Social Media Marketing World, because it is worth that effort. So I hope to see you there. So until next week, cheers.